So, you think you know the story of Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry. What about the god who, as an infant, was torn to shreds with bare hands and then eaten? The god whose own father stitched his premature embryo into his own festering thigh to carry him to term himself. And the god whose killer's ashes, steeped in his own blood, gave birth to all of humanity. This is the real myth, the one they conveniently forget to mention in history class, and it's about to shatter everything you thought you knew about the Greek gods. Hooked yet? That was just the appetizer, the overture to the real insanity. Now, buckle up, because we're about to dive into a pit of horror so deep, your worst nightmares will look like a teddy bear's picnic. We're talking about a birth, but not the kind with storks and cabbage patches. We're talking about the birth of a monster destined to rule the world. And it all starts, as usual, with the head maniac and sicko of Olympus. Yep, you guessed it, Zeus, the same one they paint in the storybooks as a noble, bearded grandpa. Forget all that. This grandpa was obsessed with an idea. The idea of creating the perfect heir. Not just any heir, but one who would inherit everything, the entire cosmos. And to do that, according to an ancient prophecy, he had to do the unthinkable. They don't talk about this in polite society, but we're not in polite society, are we? Zeus needed a child with his own daughter, Persephone. Just picture this. A young woman, the goddess of spring, is wandering in a secluded cave. And then, something approaches her, not a muscular god, not a shower of gold, but something cold, slick, and scaly. A giant serpent. It coils around her body, its icy skin sliding against hers. This isn't passion. This is pure, concentrated humiliation. The smell of damp earth, the chill of the stone, and that sickening, crushing weight. This is the part where your high school teacher awkwardly flipped the page, muttering something about allegories. To hell with allegories. This was violation in its most grotesque form. Okay, stop. Let's just take a breath for a second. Why? Why would he, the ruler of all, need such a vile performance? Weren't there other ways? Other women, goddesses, nymphs, but here's the detail historians shamefully hide in the footnotes. Zeus didn't do this out of lust. It was a cold, horrifying calculation. The prophecy stated that only a child born of this nightmarish union of a serpent father and his goddess daughter could be his successor, the master of all creation. And so, from this union of filth and divine blood, he is born, a baby god. And Zeus, in a fit of fatherly pride, places him on his own throne and hands him his ultimate weapon, his main symbol of power, the thunderbolts. Imagine it, a baby, not yet able to walk, sitting on the throne of the universe, playing with deadly bolts of energy as if they were rattles. The heir was ready, the plan had worked. You'd think this was the happy ending, Olympus style. Dad is pleased, the air is shining. But in the heavens, there's always someone watching another's happiness with pure hatred. And while the infant played with his lightning bolts, oblivious to his fate, a jealous goddess was already sharpening her teeth in the shadows. And she had a fate in mind for him that would make his serpentine birth look like a fairy tale. The infant god was torn to pieces out of jealousy. All right, the revenge plot is ready. The assassins have been found. Hera, goddess mother, protector of marriage, eternally humiliated by her cheating husband, had decided she'd had enough. Enough of watching his bastards multiply, and to kill the infant, she didn't hire some run-of-the-mill mercenaries. Oh no, she went to the ones Zeus feared and hated most of all. The Titans. Picture the scene, creatures as ancient as fear itself, the ones the Olympians had overthrown and cast into the abyss of Tartarus. Massive, grotesque, steeped in an age-old malice. And here comes Hera to these monsters, basically saying, want revenge on Zeus, tear his little boy to pieces. And I'll look the other way, the deal was done faster than you could blink. This is the part where your high school teacher awkwardly flipped the page. The Titans, to keep from scaring the baby, smeared their horrific faces with white clay. A makeshift disguise, they crept up to the cradle, not with clanking weapons, but with rattles. Yes, you heard that right. Rattles, shiny pine cones, a spinning top. They were luring the god-child like a kitten, and him, he was a baby. They showed him shiny things, and of course, he reached for them, setting his thunderbolts aside. And here's the key detail that official history prefers to shamefully hide in the footnotes. The final lure was a mirror. The Titans held out a polished piece of metal, and the infant saw his own reflection for the first time. He froze. The little god, capable of commanding the elements, was utterly disarmed and hypnotized by his own face. And in that moment, as he stared, mesmerized, they pounced. He tried to fight back. He was a god, after all. The legends say he shapeshifted, becoming a lion, roaring and tearing at his attackers, then a serpent trying to slither away. But there were too many of them. They were too ancient, too strong, and they were driven by pure, concentrated hatred. They pinned him down, and they didn't use weapons. No, they tore at him with their bare hands. Do you hear me? Tearing a living god to shreds. Imagine the sound of ripping flesh, the wet crunch of divine bones. That metallic smell of blood mixed with the ozone from the extinguished thunderbolts he'd held just moments before. Let's just pause here for a second. What has to go on in a goddess's head to stoop to this? To hire these primeval bulldozers to murder an infant? This isn't just jealousy. This was the eruption of centuries of humiliation. Every bastard Zeus brought home was a slap in the face, and now she decided to answer. Not with a slapback, but with a fountain of blood. But if you think tearing a child apart is rock bottom, buckle up again. The Titans didn't just kill him, they decided to throw a feast. Yes, they built a fire, skewered the pieces of divine flesh, and began to roast them, hoping to consume the power of their enemy. But amidst this cannibalistic banquet, in the filth and blood, they missed one tiny, yet crucial, detail. A small, still warm, beating heart. And that heart would become the key to a resurrection and a revenge so terrible it would make even the almighty Zeus sick to his stomach. Because from the death of one god, a completely different one was about to be born. The god of wine, madness, and bloody ecstasy. His resurrection is a ritual of body horror. Alright, let's push on. So, the Titans have devoured the little god, leaving behind nothing but greasy ash and one tiny, still warm, beating heart. They don't talk about this in polite society, but we're not in polite society, are we? So, this heart, a blooded, pulsing lump of flesh, is picked up by none other than Athena herself. Yes, the goddess of wisdom. Picture it, resplendent in her shining armor, the symbol of strategy and pure reason. She lifts the gory scrap from the ground, disdainfully, with just her fingertips. She is the only one in this bloody chaos to realize the game isn't over yet. The heart is brought to Zeus, and what do you think the grief-stricken father does? Cry, hold a funeral. Ha! Don't make me laugh. Zeus looks at this heart and doesn't see a tragedy. He sees an opportunity, raw material. And here's where we get into body horror that would make Cronenberg himself blush. Zeus takes his son's heart and brews a potion from it. Yes, you heard that right. He tosses it into a cauldron, rendering it down into a thick, dark, pulsating broth. This isn't your soup of the day. This is concentrated divine essence, stirred with grief and rage. They definitely don't tell you this in history class. There, it's all neat and tidy. Here, it's primal terror. But the potion is only half the battle. He needs an incubator. And Zeus, as usual, finds one in someone else's bed. His new plaything was Semele, a mortal princess, madly in love with the thunder god. And so he comes to her, not with flowers, not with gifts, He comes with a chalice sloshing with the brew made from his dead child's heart, and he makes her drink it. Just imagine for a second, your divine lover hands you some murky concoction and says, "Drink. It's for our future." She drinks. And she becomes pregnant, not with his seed, but with the digested heart of his other child. Horrified, we haven't even gotten to the main event. Of course, Zeus's wife, Hera, found out about the affair. She arranged for Semele to be burned to a crisp by witnessing her lover's true form, right in the final stages of her pregnancy. Ash, smoke, screams. And a premature, tiny fetus about to die with its mother. The end. Did you really think Zeus would be stopped by a little thing like the death of his surrogate? He's a god. He's an egoist to the bone. At the last second, while Semele's body is still smoldering, he snatches the tiny, barely living embryo from her womb. Now what? Where to put it? They didn't exactly have incubators on Olympus. Now brace yourself. This is the part where your high school teacher definitely fainted. Zeus, king of the gods, rips open his own thigh. He doesn't ask Asclepius, the god of medicine, for help. No, he does it himself. Tearing his divine flesh raw, blood gushing, mixing with the ashes of his dead lover, he shoves the premature fetus into his own leg, right into the muscle tissue. And then he sews it shut, some say with golden thread. To make it pretty, I guess. Can you even picture it? The king of the universe, limping around Olympus, while his son gestates in a festering, swollen wound in his leg. He's using his own body as a surrogate womb. What must that have felt like? To walk, feeling an unborn god squirming inside your thigh. To feel the pain, the fever, the infection. He was pregnant, not in his belly, in his thigh. All of Olympus saw their ruler limping and wincing in pain, but none knew the nightmarish secret he carried. And when the time came, he simply ripped his leg open again and pulled out a fully formed infant. A god, born twice, born once from his mother's womb and a second time from his father's thigh. But if you think being born from your own dad's festering thigh was the weirdest thing that could happen to a kid, you have no idea what the fury of a scorned goddess is capable of. Hera had been watching the whole time, and she was cooking up a childhood for the newborn that would make being eaten by titans look like a walk in the park. Zeus's revenge literally incinerated the world. Did I say being eaten by titans was a walk in the park compared to Hera's revenge? Well, the titans didn't keep anyone waiting. Hera, the original bitch goddess of Olympus, just gave them the green light. She pointed a finger at the infant and, basically, said, "Sick M," and the titans came. But this wasn't just some straightforward hit job. Oh no, this was a ritual. They smeared their faces with white clay, turning themselves into faceless, terrifying ghouls. They brought toys with them, rattles, some pine cones, a spinning top, and a mirror. They surrounded the cradle of little Zagreus, the future Dionysus, and started rattling all this junk. The baby, like any baby, was curious. He saw his own reflection in the shiny mirror, giggled, and reached for it with his little hands. And in that instant, they pounced. They didn't just kill him. They tore him limb from limb, alive, with their filthy claws and teeth. Just imagine the sound, the crunch of tiny bones, the wet squelch of ripping flesh. They devoured him raw, piece by piece, until almost nothing was left of Zeus's heir, only his heart. A tiny, still beating heart, which the goddess Athena managed to snatch from the bloodbath at the last second. You might be wondering, why all the fuss with the mirror and the rattles? Well, my friends, this is the part your high school history teacher conveniently skipped over. This wasn't just murder, it was a ritual siphoning of divine power. They didn't just want to destroy him, they wanted to absorb his very essence. And then, Olympus shuddered. Zeus felt it. He didn't hear it. He didn't see it. He felt the thread connecting him to his sun snap. The rage that consumed him is beyond words. This wasn't anger. This was a cosmic, universe-shattering fury. The sky turned black. The air grew thick and crackled with static. It wasn't thunder. It was the single, unbroken roar of a universe ripping at the seams. Zeus didn't bother with an investigation. He just unleashed his full power on the Titans. Lightning didn't strike in bolts, but in a solid torrent of pure fire. For a moment, the world became a furnace. The Titans didn't even have time to scream. Their bodies, gorged on stolen divine flesh, simply exploded, vaporized by the onslaught of this primordial energy. He wasn't just killing them, he was wiping them from existence. When it was over, a dead silence fell. On the scorched earth where the Titans had just feasted, nothing remained. Only the smell of burnt meat, ozone, and primal terror, and ash. A greasy, filthy, black ash, all that was left of the murderers. And here's the detail that historians shamefully tuck away in the footnotes. This ash was special. It was a mixture of two essences, the vile, filthy, rebellious nature of the Titans and the divine essence of Zagreus, which they had devoured. The divine and the monstrous fused into one, and from this, substance. From this filthy ash, soaked in divine blood and the tear-drenched earth, Zeus molded. Yeah, you heard me. The first humans. Created from the remains of god-killers and a piece of a devoured god. According to this myth, every single one of us carries both. A divine spark, a pull toward greatness, toward the light. And the titanic muck, our envy, our cruelty, our eternal urge to rebel against the gods. And this duality, this eternal inner conflict between the divine spark and the titanic muck, this is humanity's greatest curse and, perhaps, its greatest gift. But how were the gods supposed to control this new, volatile race with the blood of murderers and gods flowing through its veins? Oh, they came up with rules, and the very first, most brutal rule concerned how a man was to prove his devotion. Through sacrifice, and you can't even imagine how bloody and twisted those first rituals were. We all carry the curse of a murdered god, and you can't even imagine how bloody and twisted those first rituals were. You think it's just about slaughtering a lamb on an altar. Ha, not even close. To understand the sheer scale of this madness, you have to get inside their heads. Right into the rotten core of their worldview. And here's the detail historians love to hide in the fine print. Their entire lives, their entire culture was built on one terrifying idea. We are all cursed. From the moment we are born. So, you buckled up. Let's go. Forget Zeus the thunder wielder and Aphrodite on a seashell. That's the pop culture fluff for tourists. The real, deep-seated faith of the ancient Greeks was far darker. They believed that the world was once ruled by titans, vicious, primordial beasts who were jealous of the young gods. So they hunted down Zeus's favorite son, a young god named Zagreus, and did something to him that you don't talk about in polite company. But we're not in polite company, are we? They ripped him to pieces, alive. Can you picture that? Not just killed, but torn apart? The cracking of bones, the spray of divine blood, screams that shook the cosmos. They devoured his raw, still quivering flesh, gloating in their victory. But Daddy Zeus saw everything, and his rage was worse than any nuke. He incinerated the Titans with a single bolt of lightning. And now the most important part, what was left after this divine barbecue? That's right, ash. Greasy, stinking ash from the burnt Titans, mixed with the blood and undigested chunks of the god Zagreus. And it was from this from this vile sludge that the gods created the first human. Do you feel it? Our body is the dust and flesh of evil, envious murderers. And our soul our soul is a tiny, imprisoned fragment of the heart of that very same butchered god. And right here, my friends, is where it gets interesting. Just think for a second what that means for the average Greek farmer tilling his field. Your body is not your friend. It's a prison. A festering, stinking cage of flesh that's always demanding something. It wants to eat, sleep, and fuck. These are the desires of the Titans, pulling you down into the muck. And inside this cage sits your sola divine spark that remembers the light and wants to be free. Bingo! There you have it, the entire meaning of life, ancient Greek style. Not to build a home, not to raise a son, but to free your soul from its cursed prison of a body. And how do you do that? How do you prove to the gods that you're on the side of the soul, not this lump of meat you're trapped in? Through pain, through humiliation, through denying everything your body craves. That's precisely why those first rituals were so brutal. Every cut, every lash of the whip, every drop of blood spilled, it wasn't just a sacrifice. It was a scream, I am not a Titan. I am Zagreus. I hate this flesh as much as you do. They tortured themselves to prove their loyalty to the divine, to show they were ready to do anything to break free from this vicious cycle of rebirth into new prison bodies. Now imagine ... how did this cult of death and self-mutilation view the act that creates new life? Sex, childbirth, the very act of creating a new prison for another fragment of the divine soul. Oh, believe me, they turned even that into a sophisticated torture of shame and fear. And what they did to newborns ... well, that's another story entirely. So it turns out every one of us is a walking crime scene. A conflict between a divine spark and titanic rot locked inside a single piece of meat. If you're into this kind of uncensored, no bullshit deep dive, then stop messing around, smash that subscribe button and hammer that like so I know to dig even deeper. And drop a comment below. What other mythological story, the kind that makes history teachers sweat, should we tear apart bone by bone next?